I was doing everything right and still didn't feel at peace. I thought if I stayed on top of everything, if I showed up well in every area of my life, if I could just have the right planner, the right system, the right structure, then everything would click into place seamlessly. Then I would finally feel like I was doing enough. But instead of peace, I felt pressure. No matter what I did, it felt like it wasn't enough. And instead of feeling more in control, I just felt exhausted. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I wasn't just trying to be responsible. I was stuck in perfectionism. And it doesn't look the way you think it. And I think a lot of us confuse those two things. So in this video, I want to talk about why perfectionism steals your peace and how to start stepping out of that cycle. And at the end of this video, I will share with you my restorative doctor's note. And you want to stay for that because that will provide key insights regarding dealing with the perfectionism mindset. And if you are new here, welcome. I'm Michelle. I am a physician, wife, and a mother, and I help overwhelmed moms who carry much to slow down, to help regulate their nervous systems, to create peace and restoration within themselves and in their homes. So let's talk about being responsible versus perfectionism. Because on the surface, perfectionism doesn't look like a problem. It looks like you're being responsible, right? You're staying on top of your things, you're caring deeply about your life, you're wanting to do things well, and in and of itself, those things aren't bad. But there's a difference between being responsible and feeling like everything depends on you. So let me grab my trusty whiteboard and show you this. So responsibility says, I want to do this well. But perfectionism says, I have to get this just right. And that one shift changes everything. Because when you feel like you have to get everything right all the time, then there is no room for rest. There's no room for margin. There's no room for grace for yourself. Perfectionism creates an invisible pressure, and that pressure often isn't coming from everything in your life that you need to manage. It's coming from the expectations that you have for yourself. So for me, let me tell you what this sounded like in terms of an internal dialogue. If I just stay on top of everything, then I'll be at peace. If I can just handle all of this, then I'll feel like I'm doing enough. If I check all of the boxes, then I'm good. And don't we love our checklists? I mean, I was obsessed with the checklist and getting everything checked off by the end of the day. The truth is, and we know this, that feeling of complete peace from perfectionism, it never comes. Because even when you do everything right, there's always something else, something you forgot, something unexpected, something you could have done better, something still waiting for you. So think of it this way, visualize it as the finish line that moves every time you get close. You're running a race and it's a moving target and you can never get there. And that's when this began to click for me. Perfectionism isn't about doing things well, per se. It's about trying to earn peace. And when that happens, it means that peace becomes conditional and rest becomes something that you have to deserve. And your worth starts to feel tied to performance, which is not what we want. So let me give you some examples, things that I still deal with even today. So I'm sitting down on the couch. We're trying to relax. And we feel guilty that we're not doing something more, that we're not cleaning up that mess in the corner, that we're not folding the laundry, that we're not checking our work email, whatever it may be. This is this like background processing that's going on within us. We take free time, but then we have anxiety about what we're not doing when we're out doing other things. We try to be more intentional. We try to slow down, but then we feel behind. And you realize that you're not going to be at peace either way in this scenario. Like you can't win. So something has to change. And the reason this is so hard to break is because it doesn't just live in your thoughts. It lives in your body. And I'll explain what I mean by that. For many of us, this pattern started very early on, in childhood likely. for a lot of people. We were praised for getting perfect grades, for doing things just the right way, for achieving, for performing well. And over time, if that gets out of balance, we start to internalize that. We begin to believe this is what it means to be good. This is what it means to be enough. And those patterns don't just stay in our minds. They form grooves in the brain that affect the way we think, affects the way we respond, affects the way we move through life. It becomes crystallized. And somewhere along the way, a responsibility turned into value. You didn't realize it, but you weren't doing things as much because it mattered, but more to prove that you mattered. So by the time we're adults, it doesn't feel like a choice anymore. It becomes automatic. It just feels like this is the way I live. And underneath all of that, if we peel back the layers and understand what's going on from a nervous system perspective, right? Your brain is wired to keep you safe. It is always searching for what might go wrong, what needs your attention, what do you need to stay on top of. And perfectionism actually feels like a solution to that because it says, if I can just stay ahead of everything, then I'll be okay. And so will my family, and so will my home. So, in a way, perfectionism isn't random. It's your nervous system trying to create a sense of safety. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking to yourself, this is me, you're not alone. I am a recovering perfectionist. Then you can let me know in the comments. I read every single one, and I'd love to know your thoughts and how you feel about it. And as we know in life just isn't controllable like that. We wish it were, but it's just not. The more you try to control everything, it seems, the more out of control it feels. And your body is in a state of constant fight or flight, which then induces tension because your mind is always anticipating, it's always managing, it's always carrying. In a previous video, I discussed mental load and how that weight on us over time, emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, it can lead to stress in the body, illness, and so on and so forth, many other. And this is where I would say the final shift came for me in terms of this issue, because I had to ask myself this question. If my peace depended on me getting everything right, then what actually am I trusting in terms of my faith? So let's turn to Proverbs, the book of wisdom, Proverbs 3:5-6. This is the Amplified Bible. And the word says, trust in and rely confidently on the Lord with all your heart. And do not rely on your own insight or understanding. In all your ways, I would underline that. In all your ways, know and acknowledge and recognize him. And he will make your path straight and smooth, removing obstacles that block your way. We've read that scripture so many times, but it finally hit me like a ton of bricks. And perfectionism was asking me to rely on myself, to hold it all together, to make sure nothing fell apart. But peace was never meant to come from all of that because I was trying to carry something that I was never meant to carry alone. And the word says it, lean not on your own understanding and trust and rely on him. And when you finally get this revelation, and you finally can understand this, it's like a breath of fresh air. You can breathe and just thank God that you don't have to do anything alone. You don't have to do life alone. He's got you. So you might be saying, okay, Michelle, this all sounds great. I understand the awareness of where this comes from. I understand the science behind it. I see the faith component and how this all works together. What do you actually do with this? Because it's one thing, of course, to recognize a pattern, and it's another thing to start stepping out of it. So let's discuss one small shift that I made that helped me to begin breaking this cycle. And it was this. Instead of asking myself at the end of the day, did I do everything right? Did I check everything off my list? I started asking, what was I trying to feel? How did I want to feel? Was I trying to feel in control? Was I trying to feel like enough? Or was I wanting to feel at peace? Because that question changes everything. It shifts you from performance to awareness. And once I could see that, I realized that, of course, this peace that I wanted was never going to come from doing more. Quite the contrary, it was going to come from doing less and trusting more. And I didn't have a language for it at the time, but this is where the foundation for everything I share now started to form. So the 5 pillars that I discuss in many of my videos, this was the origin of that. I had to first assess, what are my core values? What are my core values? And as it relates to perfectionism, for example, the first pillar, faith, it was going to be trusting God instead of myself. When it comes to that gentle science pillar, understanding how my mind and body are wired, working with it and not against it when it comes to perfectionism. The third pillar, which is rhythms, daily rhythms, creating space for rest within myself and in my home instead of constant pressure, creating a soft structure that can be fluid and not as rigid, because life cannot be exactly the way we want it to be all the time. The fourth pillar is beauty, slowing down enough to notice what matters and take a moment to enjoy my surroundings. And the fifth pillar, nature, stepping outside of the noise, getting outside, reconnecting with everything that God created for us. That's why I try to do the majority of my videos outside as much as I can, because out here we can exhale a bit and just slow down, which is what we need. These weren't things to perfect. They were anchors to come back to. So these pillars are my home base. And I encourage you to start thinking about what your values are and do they align with the current season that you're in. And this goes beyond, this is a universal theme. Okay. What do I value? What are my core values? And is my life matching up with what I value? Perfectionism doesn't align with my values, with my core values. So I had to let that go and learn to do this a different way. And before closing, here it is. I want to leave you with my restorative doctor's note. This is the main takeaway from this entire video. This is what I want you to remember and internalize. So remember that living doesn't start when the house is perfect, when I get the perfect job, when I lose the weight, when I take the vacation, when my kids are doing what I need them to be doing. Life is happening right now, as imperfect as it is. The Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday into Monday, Tuesday, this is our lives. This is what makes up the majority of our lives. It's the everyday, the mundane, imperfect everyday. And I believe that the sooner we embrace the imperfections, the more joy we will have in whatever season of life we are currently in. I'm certainly not saying, to just kind of wing it or be disorganized. What I'm saying is embrace the fact that we will never be able to have things fall perfectly all the time. And that is okay. And actually, it's more than okay, because it's freedom. And what do we want in our homes at the end of the day? We want peace, joy, and restoration. So if this video resonated with you today, I hope you'll share in the comments what is something you've been trying to carry that you were never meant to, or you can give me a hands up emoji that you can relate to this. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you want to go deeper into this way of living, this is exactly what I share here on this channel. So thank you so much for being here. And until next time, take care, be well, and I'll see you soon.